Flesh Lip, Silent Hill. Two gets celebrated for Pyramid Head. It gets discussed for the nurses. What almost nobody talks about is the thing hanging from the hospital ceiling, waiting for you to walk underneath it. Meet the Flesh Lip, a creature so conceptually wrong that the game practically dares you to look up and regret it immediately. Visually, the Flesh Lip defies comfortable description. Two enormous legs descend from the ceiling, kicking downward with slow, deliberate force. At the point where it anchors to the surface above, there is an opening. Fleshy, consuming, and absolutely not something you want to spend time thinking about. The wrongness is directional. It does not chase you across the floor like something with the decency to stay at ground level. It owns the ceiling. It redefines which directions are safe, and the answer it arrives at is none of them. The design choice to invert the creature is not accidental. Silent Hill 2's monster design operates on a principle of disrupting the body's expected orientation, taking shapes that are almost familiar, and tilting them just far enough that recognition becomes its own form of horror. The Flesh Lip takes that principle and applies it architecturally. The ceiling was never a threat before. The game uses the Flesh Lip to close that last remaining assumption, to make the player understand that every surface in this building is a potential surface of harm. The hospital itself becomes the creature. Lore-wise, the Flesh Lip belongs to the same psychological architecture as every other creature James Sunderland generates in Silent Hill 2. Where the mannequin fragments the female form into objectified components, the Flesh Lip takes that fragmentation further. This is desire and shame so thoroughly collapsed that what remains is not even a recognizable shape, just function, just the suggestion of consumption and the legs that guard it. No face, no identity, no pretense of being anything other than what it represents. James Sunderland arrives in Silent Hill carrying guilt he has not yet named. His relationship with Mary, with her body during the long years of her illness, with what he eventually did at the end of those years, all of it has been converted by the town into physical form. The Flesh Lip represents one specific register of that guilt, not love, not grief. The part he cannot say out loud, the part that the town's fog draws out of him and gives mass and weight and a set of legs that kick downward from the ceiling of a hospital corridor. The hospital encounters make this worse. You are already in a location built around illness, around Mary, around everything James has been carrying since before the game began. Then the ceiling becomes hostile. Every upward glance becomes a question you did not want to ask. The Flesh Lip does not need to chase you. It simply occupies space and punishes the assumption that horror only comes from one direction. It is what the other Silent Hill, two monsters look like when the metaphor stops trying to hold itself together and decides the pieces are enough. Siam, the mannequin, gets all the attention. Two pairs of female legs fused at the waist, walking on four limbs, deeply and immediately wrong. People write about the mannequin, people analyze it, make video essays about it, reference it in design discussions. Meanwhile, the Siam exists in the same game, doing something considerably more disturbing, and receives approximately a fraction of that conversation. The Siam is two human figures fused into one body. One dominant figure crawls forward on all fours, functional, aggressive, driving the mass toward you with purpose. The other figure is folded backward into the first one's torso, facing the wrong direction. Limbs arranged at angles that suggest the word wrong does not quite cover it. The passenger is still there, still present, still recognizably human in shape, just inverted and absorbed and carried somewhere it cannot leave. That detail is where the lore lives. Silent Hill. 2 builds every major creature from the debris of James. Sunderland's psychology, specifically his relationship with Mary during her illness. The Siam represents codependency at its most literal. 2 people locked into a dynamic that long ago stopped being mutual, one carrying the other into spaces and situations neither was equipped to handle. Mary was ill for 3 years. James was her caregiver, her prisoner, and eventually her executioner. The Siam does not represent a healthy partnership collapsing under pressure. It represents what was already there before the pressure arrived. What the Siam understands about caregiving is something most discussions of the creature skip past. Caregiving, sustained over years, without support, without relief, without the possibility of a visible end, does not simply exhaust the caregiver. It restructures them. The person who entered the relationship and the person who emerges from 3 years of watching someone suffer are not the same person. And the difference between them is not merely tiredness. It is something closer to a permanent reorientation. James did not choose to become someone capable of what he eventually did at the end of those 3 years. He was carried there, folded into a dynamic he could not exit, facing backward while the dominant half of the pair drove them both forward. The Siam's passenger has no agency over direction. That is the image. That is what the creature is drawing. The geometry of the encounter reinforces this. Fighting the Siam forces constant lateral movement. You cannot face it directly. The design of the thing, the passenger folded into the back, means there is no clean angle. You are always partially looking away, always adjusting, never fully confronting what is in front of you. James spent 3 years doing exactly that. Some relationships end. Some fuse, carry the weight forward into the dark, and call it survival. Abstract daddy. There is a version of this entry that opens with a joke, a dry observation about Silent Hill 2's commitment to metaphor, something about Konami's character design meetings, a line that makes the horror approachable before the real information lands. That version does not exist here. Abstract daddy does not get that treatment because what it represents does not either. Angela Orozco moves through Silent Hill 2 like someone who arrived in hell and found it familiar. She is not surprised by the monsters. She is not confused by the town's cruelty. When James encounters creatures that unsettle him, Angela encounters one that she recognizes. The abstract daddy is her monster, not his. And that distinction carries the full weight of what the game is trying to say. Physically, the abstract daddy is 2 figures pressed into one shape, moving atop something that resembles a bed frame fused into a single lurching mass. Nothing about its design is accidental. Nothing about it is unclear. The game does not explain what it means. It does not need to. Silent Hill has never needed to explain itself to anyone who has already lived inside a version of it. Angela's history walks with her through these corridors. The abstract daddy is that history given form, given weight, given a body that the fog can send down a hallway toward her. Silent Hill 2 is built around James's guilt, which means most of its monsters are his. The game rarely pauses to acknowledge that others have carried their own damage into this place, their own wounds that the town is equally capable of rendering into flesh. Angela's presence throughout is the quiet argument that Silent Hill does not belong to James alone. She was living inside her version of this place long before the fog had a name for it. The town did not create her horror, it inherited it. The abstract daddy does not haunt James's path. It appears where Angela is, in the shape her history assigned to the thing she was never allowed to name. The town is precise about this. It always is. What makes this creature the most difficult to look at is not the design. It is her face when it is over. When James defeats it in her presence, Angela does not look freed. She looks like someone watching the last familiar thing disappear into the dark. And that expression contains more than most games ever attempt to hold. The most disturbing monsters are not the ones that cannot be killed. They are the ones that arrive already wearing a face you know. Walter's victims. Most horror games give you monsters that want to kill you. Silent Hill 4. The room gives you ghosts of people who have already been killed, and then makes their inability to rest entirely your problem. This is the entry where Silent Hill stops building metaphors and starts building evidence. Walter Sullivan committed 21 murders as part of a ritual called the 21 Sacraments, a ceremony designed, according to the order's theology, to awaken a holy power and return Walter to the place he considered his mother. The victims were specific, selected. Each one assigned a number and a meaning within the ritual's internal logic. When Henry Townshend begins exploring the worlds bleeding into his apartment, he does not find monsters in the traditional sense. He finds the people Walter killed, still present, still tethered to the locations where their lives ended. The ghosts cannot be defeated. This is the mechanical fact that makes them so deeply unsettling. Weapons do, not destroy them. They can be repelled temporarily, knocked back with haunting items, forced into brief retreat, but they return. They always return to the place where Walter decided their story ended. The design of their persistence is the design of Walter's theology made interactive. He did not simply kill 21 people. He assigned each of them a permanent position within a structure he believed was sacred. They are still in those positions. They will remain in those positions until something larger than Walter's intention is applied to the situation. And Silent Hill 4 is not generous enough to guarantee that anything of the kind arrives. Henry can survive. The victim's situation is a separate matter. Visually, they retain recognizable human shapes, faces corrupted and distorted, movement wrong in that specific Silent Hill way that suggests humanity rather than abandoning it entirely. They are not creatures. They are people in an extremely bad situation that has been ongoing since their deaths. Richard Braintree, Jasper Gine, Andrew DeSalvo, victims 5, 10, and 11. The game gives them names and numbers simultaneously, which is precisely what Walter did. He gave them numbers first, names as an afterthought, if at all. Silent Hill 4 inherits his organizational logic and applies it to the player's experience, so that encountering these ghosts always carries the faint information that someone with a ledger decided this person mattered in a specific enumerated way, and that way had nothing to do with who they actually were. What Walter Sullivan built was not an army of monsters. He built a collection of people who could not stop being victims. He gave them numbers, assigned them a purpose within his theology, and left them there. Henry moves through those spaces as an intruder. The ghosts do not know they are horror. They only know they cannot leave. Valtiel. Most antagonists in horror want something from you. Valtiel wants something for you, which is somehow considerably worse. Silent Hill 3 introduces Valtiel in the margins. He appears in the background of certain rooms, partially visible, always moving, turning a valve, operating unseen mechanisms, dragging Heather Mason's body when she dies, and restoring her so that she can die again later, because Heather dying permanently before she fulfills her purpose would be inconvenient for everyone, except Heather. He is not a threat in the conventional sense. He never attacks, he simply maintains. Physically, Valtiel is defined by what draws the eye before anything else: the red gloves. The rest of him is pale, featureless, the head suggesting a face the way a blank wall suggests a door. He moves with the focused efficiency of someone performing a task they have, performed thousands of times because they probably have. He is not malfunctioning. He is working exactly as intended. The valves he operates throughout the game are not decorative. Within the Order's theological cosmology, Valtiel's role as an attendant is specifically tied to mechanism, to the idea that the divine operates through process, through steps that must be executed in sequence by a being patient enough to execute them indefinitely. The valves are the physical expression of that theology. Something must be maintained. Something must be turned. Valtiel turns it. The game never explains what the valves do, which is correct, because that information is not for Heather and it is not for the player. It is operational data that belongs to a system operating on a scale neither of them can fully access. The lore positions Valtiel as a divine attendant within the Order's theology, an entity whose name derives from the concept of attending, of service. He exists at a level of the Order's cosmology just below the god itself, responsible for ensuring the necessary events occur in the necessary sequence. When Heather needs to survive, Valtiel ensures she survives. His presence is confirmation, delivered quietly and without acknowledgement, that the cult's god is real within this world's logic. That reframes everything. Every corridor Heather has walked, every monster she has fought. Valtiel in the background of certain rooms means none of it was chaos. It was a schedule. Missionary. Some monsters are accidents, biological errors, psychological projections that the town generates from the raw material of whoever is suffering inside it. The missionary is none of those things. The missionary is a policy decision made by people who attended meetings and wrote documents and arrived at the conclusion that this shape, these blades, this specific configuration of violence was the correct tool for the work they had in mind. Visually, the missionary announces its origin immediately. The body is arranged in a cruciform shape, limbs extended in a configuration that mirrors religious iconography, with enough precision to be intentional, and enough wrongness to confirm that whatever produced this has a very specific relationship with the sacred. The limbs end in blades. It moves with aggression that other Silent Hill 3 creatures do not bother with. It does not stalk, it commits. The cruciform arrangement is worth dwelling on. The order does not position this as irony. They do not design the missionary as a subversion of the cross. They design it as a sincere expression of their theology applied to function. In the order's framework, suffering is the mechanism of holiness. The shape of the cross is the shape of a body in pain, extended outward, arms wide, held in place by something external. The missionary does not parody that image. It operationalizes it. It takes the posture of suffering and gives it blades and sends it forward into the world to do the work the order requires. The order believes suffering is the mechanism through which their God enters the world. They believe pain is holy, that the body is an instrument of divine purpose, and that the appropriate response to this belief is to act on it with dedication. The missionary is that belief with a skeleton. It is the moment a theology stops being a system of ideas and starts being a manufacturing process. Heather Mason is in Silent Hill 3 because the order needs her body as a vessel. The missionary is the enforcement mechanism for that need. It does not pursue her because it hates her. It pursues her because she is scheduled. Valtiel watches from the background and ensures the sequence continues. The missionary moves through the foreground and ensures nothing interrupts it. Together, they represent the complete operational theology of a religion that decided the distance between faith and violence was a bureaucratic formality. Closer. Silent Hill. 3 contains a monster that looks like someone tried to describe an angel to a person who had only ever experienced suffering, and that person did their sincere best with the information they were given. The result is the closer. Large, pale, vaguely humanoid, moving, with the slow and absolute certainty of something that has never needed to hurry, because hurrying implies the possibility of failure. The first thing you notice is the absence. No eyes, no mouth, no expression of any kind. The face, if it can be called that, is a smooth and featureless surface that offers nothing back. The arms terminate in large, flat structures that function as both weapon and shield, and the creature advances with these forward, a posture that reads simultaneously as offering and threat. It does not communicate. It does not react. It processes. The absence of a face is doing specific theological work. Faces are how intention is communicated. Faces are how you determine whether something in front of you is capable of mercy. The closer's blank surface is not the absence of a face. It is the answer to the question of whether mercy is available here. The order's God does not offer mercy. It offers purpose. The closer carries that answer forward on a smooth plane of flesh that reflects nothing back at you, and the absence itself becomes the message. Lore positions the closer within the order's theological framework as a corrupted reflection of divine messengers. The God that the order worships produces not servants of light, but hollow approximations, beings of pure function that move through the areas most saturated with Alessa's suffering and the cult's influence. They appear in spaces where the order's belief has been concentrated longest, which means they are not invaders. They are locals. They are what the ambient religion of this town looks like when it decides to stand up and walk around. Alessa Gillespie has been present in Silent Hill's history for decades before Silent Hill 3 begins. The suffering the order inflicted on her to try to birth their God did not dissipate when it failed. It accumulated. It soaked into the locations where it occurred, into the walls and corridors that witnessed it. And the closer is what that accumulated. Suffering produces when the theology of the place calls for something to inhabit it. The closer is not imported. It grew here, out of the specific history of what was done to a specific child in the name of a specific God. And it has been here ever since, waiting for the geometry of the situation to require it. The gameplay encounters reinforce this. The closer does not give you clean space. It fills rooms, uses its body as architecture, and forces engagement rather than avoidance. You cannot simply go around it. You have to reckon with it. This is the closer's precise function within the theology, not to destroy, not to punish, to demonstrate that the God's presence in this place is not metaphorical, not historical, not something that happened and left. It is current. It is here. It is the faith of a murderous institution made hollow and sent forward, and it keeps moving because no one inside it ever told it to stop. Walter Sullivan. Every monster in this list is an explanation. The flesh lip explains shame. The siam explains codependency. Abstract Daddy explains what happens when the people who should protect you become the thing you need protection from. Walter Sullivan is the thing that needed no explaining. He explained himself, wrote it in the locations of 21 bodies, and called it Scripture. Walter is unique in the Silent Hill catalog because he is simultaneously the person and the monster, the perpetrator and the product, the weapon and the child who was handed to the weapon and told this was love. He was born in Ashfield, abandoned as an infant in apartment 302 of the South Ashfield Heights building. Members of the order found him. They raised him with a specific theology. They told him that room 302 was his mother, that the room was alive, that returning to it was the holiest thing he could accomplish. Walter believed them completely. The order did not raise Walter out of charity. They raised him because they needed a receiver of wisdom, a specific role within the 21 sacraments requiring a specific psychological profile. They needed someone who would commit 21 murders, not out of cruelty or instability, but out of faith. They needed the murders to be sincere. Walter's entire upbringing was the preparation of an instrument, and the instrument was never told what it was being prepared for, because an instrument that understands its purpose might hesitate, and hesitation would compromise the ritual's integrity. The 21 sacraments were never about power in any conventional sense. They were a ritual Walter designed from the order's teachings, requiring 21 victims to open what the theology called the door to his mother. He killed 21 people to go home. The receiver of wisdom form, his final state in Silent Hill 4, is bloated and wrong and tethered to the apartment, the way the entire game has been building toward. A man who became a theology and then became a body too large to leave the room he spent his life trying to reach. What the receiver of wisdom form communicates visually is the endpoint of a belief taken to its conclusion. Walter wanted to return to his mother. He achieved it. He is in the apartment. He is fused to it, incorporated into it. A body that has arrived at its destination and can no longer be separated from the place it was trying to reach. The horror of the image is not that he failed. The horror is that he succeeded. And success looks like this. Henry Townshend survives, Walter does not. The apartment remains. Here is what Silent Hill 4 understands that is worth carrying out of this entire piece. The nurses, the siam, the hollow approximations of angels, the cult's blade-limbed policy decisions, the ghosts who cannot stop being victims. All of it is disturbing because of what it means. Walter Sullivan is disturbing because of what he believed. He was given a story as a child, a story about a room and a mother and a door and a purpose. Nobody who mattered ever told him it was not true. The order was careful about that. They were meticulous about ensuring the story reached him intact, undiluted, without any competing narrative that might introduce doubt. They understood that a belief accepted in childhood, accepted without the cognitive architecture to interrogate it, does not function like an idea. It functions like a fact. Walter did not believe room 302 was his mother in the way an adult adopts a new conviction. He believed it the way he believed the sky was above him and the floor was below. It was the ground. Everything else was built on top of it, and he never once thought to question it. There is nothing in these games more frightening than that.